Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Willis, your host. Today we have the honor of speaking to folks that are actually doing some important work in our criminal justice system. Today we are honored to have Jeff Reese. Jeff Reese is a former, I like to just call him a former cop, but it's a lot more than that. We'll put it in a blog. He'll be participating in the history of racism in law enforcement with the Center for the Healing of Racism. He brought this particular subject to our attention here at Politics Done Right. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Jeff Reese, who will kind of set the subject. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hi, I'm actually bringing someone with a little more knowledge than I have, which isn't difficult, but Randall Kallinen is a very famous civil rights attorney here in Houston. He's handled many, many cases. And it was odd that he has this one case that we intersect on, and it's with the Harris County Sheriff's Office. And when Randall told me the case, it was very heartbreaking. Is about a young man named Fred Harris. Randall, I'm going to let you take it from here about Fred. Do you want to tell us about Fred Harris and what happened?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. And yeah, the case of Fred Harris, first of all, just a little bit about myself very shortly. I am a civil rights lawyer. That is, I file lawsuits on behalf of individuals who believe that their constitutional rights have been violated by the government and the people who work for the government. And that could be the United States government, the county government, the city government, school districts, any governments. So in my various work, I file a lot of police misconduct cases. That's where officers use excessive force on people or falsely arrest them. Those are the most common cases. And another group of cases I have is the treatment of pretrial detainees and inmates in the jails and prisons, mostly in jails, because the prisons, those cases are much more difficult because the law is less favorable regarding the prisons than it is the people in the jails. So regarding Fred Harris, let me tell you a little background on Fred Harris. Fred Harris was a special needs student at Stafford High, which is a school district just in the southern part of Harris County. And he was a special needs student there. He was very well liked, but he was severely intellectually disabled. He had an IQ of 62, which puts him in the bottom 1% of the population. And so his mom likes to say that, or says that he had, he acted like a 13-year-old. And so, but he graduated from high school and he was very well liked in high school because he was a very cheery individual. He was very cheery. He liked to dance, and he graduated from the Stafford High School about a year and a half ago. And he, you know, like all young men, when they graduate from high school, you know, he wants to go off on his own. He doesn't always want to be around, you know, mom in the home. So he went off, you know, on his own on some adventures. He took off and ended up, you know, downtown Houston area, and so he was arrested. And what he was arrested for, and I'll just tell you what the story is about what they say he did. This is what the police say he did. And this is, remember, this is his first arrest ever in his entire life. He was 19 years old at the time, and this happened a few months ago. He was 19 years old at the time. And they say that he had a knife. Now, he didn't stab anybody or didn't even try to stab anybody, but he had a knife and somebody was scared. So the police picked him up. Now, Fred Harris had never been arrested before in his life. And so he ended up at the Harris County Jail. And at the Harris County Jail, he went to court a couple of times, and I believe that he was granted a personal recognizance bond, but for some reason wasn't let go. Now, remember, he has an IQ of 62 in the bottom 1% of the population. So it's very difficult for him to, you know, promote for himself, you know, ask questions like, you know, why am I not being let go? He might not know that he's supposed to be let go. He doesn't, you know, he's in the bottom 1% of the population. And he was not put into any special area. Now, also, I need to point out that Fred Harris was a very thin, small individual. As a matter of fact, the records show that when he was in the Harris County Jail, he weighed 98 pounds. So not
Wow.
even 100 pounds. He weighed 98 pounds. And so the Harris County Jail had not put him in any special place. And of course, when you're in the bottom 1% of the population, you're not very good at socializing. So when you're put into the jail with criminals, you have to be on your, on your toes so that you don't step on other people's toes who might injure you. But for some reason, and well, I know the reason, and we'll get to that, he was near a very violent individual. This person was very violent. As a matter of fact, just a few days prior to Fred getting injured, and we'll get into that really shortly, this individual.
Let me stop you for a second. We lost your picture.
No, I'm here. I'm switching chairs. Go ahead. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay, so where was I? Oh yes, he was with another individual, and that individual weighed 240 pounds. And why he was in the Harris County Jail is four days prior to Fred being injured by him, he had been convicted of multiple family violence offenses. And just one day prior to Fred being injured, this individual had attacked a guard, and so he currently had a charge pending him against him. So apparently, even in the jail, this person was violent. And so then I have heard that he might even had a second case of attacking a guard. But anyway, so they were put together. And when they were put together, this extremely violent, much larger individual suddenly jumped upon Fred Harris, according to witnesses, and had what's called a shank. That's in this case, it was a spoon that was, I think, a spoon or a fork that's been sharpened into like a knife. And he was severely beaten and stabbed. And eventually he was then taken to the hospital where he was brain dead. And after 4 or 5 days, they had to pull the plug on him and donated his organs to various individuals who he lives on in those various individuals, his heart, because he was a 19-year-old. So he had, a young man's organs. And so that is what happened to
Now,
Fred Harris.
let me ask you this. Earlier you alluded to there is some specific reason why you think they placed him in the cell block with the violent, very heavy-set person?
Well, I don't know about heavy set. He's kind of muscular, but 240. Anyway, so around the same time, employees of the Harris County Jail, including guards and so forth, filed a lawsuit. And in that lawsuit, they said that the jail, and they sued Harris County itself. In other words, they sued their employers. And what they said was, you're understaffing the jail, you are underfunding the jail, and because there's not enough guards to watch everybody, and for other reasons, and also I found out that there's also underfunding of counselors who could help people who need mental health counseling, probably like Fred Harris, and maybe even this individual who did the attack. So they had filed that lawsuit saying that it is dangerous for the employees as well as the inmates due to this massive underfunding, which has been going on for quite some time. And I had stated in the press when we announced, when we were trying to get some, awareness of this, I had said that this is probably going to happen again. And just a short time thereafter, there was a very serious criminal attacked a female sergeant in her office, was for some reason wandering around the jail and severely injured this individual as well. So that is what we have at the Harris County Jail, is a lot of underfunding. Now, I know that this Jeff's topic has to do with racism. And of course, I do believe that racism does play a role in this, and that is that the underfunding of for people of color and minorities in the jail, the underfunding of resources so that they can get some help and also just to be safe in the jail.
Well, I don't try to fit any particular bad act into any particular frame. So I mean, if Jeff is a very hard worker in the criminal justice system, and a part of that criminal justice system don't only have to do with racism, but also have to do with poverty and people who can't get bail. So it's large. So this may or may not be a racial issue. I don't know, and I don't know. So we don't have to try to fit anything in any particular category. We just need to fit it into the category that our criminal justice system is just about criminal in the way it treats the American citizenry, and that you are working to actually treat this as a civil rights violation. Civil rights violation can have several components. You're the lawyer that I'm pretty sure that you would note that.
Yes, but I would like to point out then some, and I know that this is not podcast is not about racism, but in general, but I would like to point out, like the ACLU, for instance, did a study in the Houston area, or there was the Texas area, that although African Americans and Caucasians smoke marijuana, for instance, at the same rates, that African Americans were stopped 3.7 times more often and arrested for marijuana than Caucasian people. So this adds to a disparate amount of individuals of color in the Harris County Jail. But you are correct. Anybody, Caucasians, Asians, Hispanics, African Americans, they all deserve to be treated, fairly. And when you're in the Harris County Jail, you have to depend upon the authorities there for every single thing you get, from brushing your teeth to your food to exercise to medical care to every last single thing. So there needs to be adequate services at the Harris County Jail in order to get this accomplished. Now, one of the things that happened almost immediately after this happened was that the Commissioner's Court and the Commissioner's Court of Harris County are the people who can, give money, and they can give money for certain reasons. So they did give money for the hiring of 100 more individuals at the Harris County Jail. However, experts say that 100 in the size of jail that Houston is, which is about the third or fourth largest jail in the United States, that 100 is not enough. They needed more, like about 500. Now, some people argue that they don't want to put more money into jails because if you build it, they will come, and that means if you put more money into the jails, then you'll have more inmates. And I do know something about that because about 15 years ago, I was a part of defeating a bond, a bond election. That's where a bond election is, where the county is trying to raise money for a certain project, and they were going to have an additional jail. But it was one of the very few times that any bond election that Harris County had, it was defeated. And that I had put an article in the Houston Chronicle and spoke out against it, as did other people. So, but as far as taking care of the people who are there now, you do need to have the people, and that includes mental health care. And a lot of people say that the mental health care should be in the free world so that people don't end up in the Harris County Jail. So there should be more mental health care provided by Harris County, the city of Houston, the state of Texas. State of Texas, of course, has one of the lowest per capita dollar expenditures for mental health in the United States. And we need to, we need to concentrate on mental health care for the populace so that we don't end up people don't end up in the Harris County Jail.
Like people like to make these issues complicated. They're not really complicated. Right now, I'm sure that the bond issue, where a lot of people who've been released on bond have been getting in trouble. Of course, if you look at it in the aggregate, I don't think it's it's a larger problem as the media would like you to make it believe, given the size of Harris County. But it's one of those political issues that create the problem. You just made a very important statement when you said, if you build it, they would come, which is true. I mean, the prison industrial complex is pathetic. The truth is, if we took care of a lot of social issues, a lot of those folks who end up in prison wouldn't, or in jail, wouldn't be there. Jeff, would you like to add anything to the conversation?
Well, yeah, I'm listening. I always enjoy listening to you guys. But Randall and I came across each other as me being a former employee of the Harris County Sheriff's Office. Randall might not want to admit it, but it was a while ago. And as a sergeant, I made the bad mistake of testifying for an inmate against the department itself. And things didn't go well with me, and that's okay. But I met Randall, and I've met you. I met some really wonderful people, and I've since retired. But one thing, whether it's a racial makeup, it's a fairness makeup, and the whole thing. I think we're all on the same page. We shouldn't have to imprison people. Randall was talking about an overall bond, a different kind of bond issue than the PR bonds that have been giving these violent criminals who are being let out to murder and kill again, where somebody like Fred Harris, who needed it, wasn't given it. So that there's an injustice still that's behind the scenes that we need to deal with. And the injustice of who we put in jail and who we let go free, that's another issue. But we all know one thing: money walks, and everything else. Money talks, everything else walks. I think that's the way it goes. But
right.
Either way, it's a class system that the rich get rich and the poor get poor.
Well, what I hope, Jeff, is that with doing programs in this series that you've been putting together in our criminal justice system in Harris County, but really that covers not only Harris County but the entire country, because Harris County has, as you know, is considered a bellwether of this United States of America. So what happens in Harris County happens everywhere else, given our makeup, given how we do. So having programs that tackles these issues are very, very important. And Randall, I'm happy that you are here doing this sort of work. Before we close, I want to ask you something, and this is a little bit off subject and going on to the bails bonds that we kind of touched on, because a lot of commenters in my programs from Houston, not the ones nationally, but mostly from Houston, have been talking about this issue about those who get out on bail and commit other crimes. And Jeff just pointed out guys like Fred Harris was not able to get bond, and he likely would have gotten out of jail and be, not create a problem. What is it that we as a citizenry do not know that we should know to make the changes so that the right people get bond and the wrong people don't?
Well, thank you so much, because you hit it exactly what I was going to say and talking about is, of course, you just don't let everybody out of jail, or you don't keep everybody in the jail. The major bond reform came in Harris County. There was a lawsuit, and they determined that for the misdemeanors, not for the felonies, that basically people should get out on PR bond. It's basically letting just about everybody out on PR bond, except for some certain misdemeanors, like violent misdemeanors. But anyway, most misdemeanors you can get out. Now the question becomes, what about the felonies? And what needs to happen is just there has to be better decisions by the judges to look at what the crime is and see whether or not this individual should be let out. So I think it's better individual decisions, not just wholesale, let everybody out or keep everybody in. So that's what we need, because
well, Randall, you're here in Houston. You've seen the headlines over the last few months. Are these bad judges just making mistakes, or are they following the law?
Well, the judges have discretion, because the bonding doesn't say a judge must set this bond or no bond. The judge has to weigh several factors, one of which is, will the individual return to the court? But one of the other major factors is this person a danger to the community?
Right.
And so it's that factor. And the judge could give them what's called the no bond, so it doesn't matter how much money they come up with, or they could give them they can give them a high bond. However, I'm always wondering, and this is what the judges were wondering in the bond reform cases, is why should money be the factor? But a judge could no bond like a person who's already, been out on bond and, did another murder or did another violent crime. That person, probably should be no bonded while they're awaiting a trial. So I think that, but sometimes I believe that judges react to public opinion. So in the past, it was let everybody out, but now the public opinion has swayed and said, keep these violent people in. So I believe that, the judges aren't perfect people. I mean, they're judges, they're like you and me doing their best. So, but if they can, just concentrate on the individual case, and sometimes there will be mistakes, but we shouldn't go overboard one way or the other. And I think this bond reform is a good thing, but of course you shouldn't go too far with it.
Randall, give me a quick closer.
Oh, I just want to say that all the people in the jails, all the inmates and the prisoners, most of them are, at heart, I believe to be good people. Some of them are not, but most of them are. And a lot of them are, got addicted to drugs or alcohol, and they committed some crimes. And so they end up in the jail or so forth, or so poor they can't get out, where a rich person could get out. So we have to remember, these are people, and the way we treat the people in the prisons and the jails should be just like, our brothers and sisters. We should give them compassion, and hopefully that they will be reformed and not be injured there in the jail.
If we really believe in people, we should believe in reform. There are people that may be unreformable, and those we should be able to get out of. But if we really want a better society, we shouldn't be trying to be too punitive. But first, Jeff, thank you for for creating this series where we're trying to mitigate the criminal justice system. Why don't you give me a quick 30-second closer or so?
Then I'll go to Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And this is what he said after spending many years in the Gulag over in the Soviet Union. He said this, he said, we'd like to believe that they were just evil people committing evil deeds, and all we have to do is kill them or separate themselves from us and everything will be fine. He says, but that's not reality. That's not humanity. He says, every person is composed of good and evil in his own heart, and no one wants to cut a piece of his own heart out.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.